I did not have sexual relations with
And I realized that this is something that
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival parties.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Good morning, Cleveland. Welcome to another edition of Backfire with John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey and myself. And Daniel Brantley, our chief engineer. Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Where's the beef?
Yeah, where's the beef? It has been one heck of a week. But I want to start with some local stuff before we get into anything else. I'm sitting here looking at a headline in Sunday's edition of the Banner. It says, Cleveland Utility passes its budget, raises rates again. Now then, what is all the remodeling going on over there on the outside? They're putting stacked stone and putting new signs up and doing all kinds of remodeling to the outside, and then they have headlines going to raise our prices again. What is going on with this?
It's sort of a bad look, isn't it?
It's a terrible look. It's absolutely crazy. Why would they sit there and be remodeling and then come out with a price increase? Anybody got any questions?
Well, the article says it's primarily caused by
TVA.
increase from TVA.
Yeah, I know. It's always TVA.
Yeah, but we've talked about that before, too.
They had price increases in 15, 16, and 18.
You ask us to conserve, and then when we conserve, that becomes the reason you have to raise our rates.
Right.
The whole point of conserving was we were supposed to be saving money.
I don't understand why they're putting mountain stone, stacked stone, and doing all this stuff to the outside just to help the looks of the building.
Well, it's to
Somebody told me they said it was to update it. It hadn't been updated in a long time.
Well, it's probably to increase, like any business, increase their competitiveness so people won't go anywhere else. Oh, that's right. They can't go anywhere else, can they?
That's right. I mean, I just can't imagine sitting there doing a remodel and then asking, the headline's got rate increases.
That stone actually increases their energy efficiency by 30%.
I doubt it.
You just make these pronouncements just as clear as you can without any hint of remorse. Complete
Why don't you
BS.
run for president? You know, I think it'd be a great idea.
You sound like a politician, Daniel. But does
Made up on the spot.
that not, it went on, I read the article pretty well throughout, and it said Eddie Cartwright said that, they need to let everybody know that this is coming from TVA, not them. They're trying to keep the cost down. But, you know what?
TVA may have mandated stacked stone exteriors.
Well, now, we should probably ask more questions about that. I mean, I don't know. This could have been, this renovation that you're talking about could have been something that they started planning for 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know.
The problem is if you come out with a renovation and the renovation includes upgrading the windows to low E glass or putting in LED lighting versus fluorescence to lower the expenditure of energy, that's one thing. When you put mountain stone on the front of the building
And a digital sign and all that out
just
front.
looks.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that point. I'm just saying I don't know that they necessarily just out of the blue decided, let's do it right now.
Well,
this says that they've dealt with basically a 1.5% rate increase from TVA 3 consecutive years. You know what the article says?
You still fall back to the mountain stone and say, what are people going to do? They got nowhere else to go. It's not like we're going to look at the building and go, well, that's a pretty shabby looking enterprise there. I believe I'll just go back to candles at night.
I mean, I hate Cleveland Utilities. I like Cleveland Utilities. I've got a lot of friends that have worked there through the years and some of this, but I just think it's pretty tough when you're sitting there passing price increases and remodeling at the same time. It just doesn't look good to me. Anyway, maybe
Point taken.
Huh?
Point taken.
What about the liquor license? You think we're going to get the liquor license straightened out around town? What a mess. How in the world, this committee, this council, They remind me of an old saying that somebody once told me. Says that a camel was designed by a committee. Okay? And all of a sudden, the council had to get this on the liquor. I mean, it can't be this hard. And they've got it upside down now, and every time somebody complains, they want to change the rules.
Well, you want to throw more fire on that. The story is that the city is saying they need more taxes. They need to raise taxes again.
I hadn't heard that one.
So you kicked the crap out of us with a gigantic tax increase.
Who said that?
Well, that's the rumors going around. And matter of fact, the city manager has said that. I brought that up several months ago. That, well, they needed more revenue. They needed increased taxes. Well, hell, you just increased taxes.
But I think they're trying to put a stop sign going each direction on every 3 or 4 way stop in downtown Cleveland.
No, it's probably, to be completely fair, it's probably more that the giant boondoggle that no private business would buy called the, Cherokee Hotel is sucking more money in than they told us it would. That might be true.
Well, I have a picture here of the new renovations, and it was from this company they hired, the other company, and it shows the Cherokee Hotel as part of the Inman Street there, and it doesn't look like a thing has changed on that hotel and this renovation drawing they put in there.
Well, who would be doing that renovation? For what end?
I'm sorry?
Who would be doing a renovation on it anyway? For what end? What are we going to do with it?
They hired another company.
To do what with it?
To renovate.
For what?
No, to clean up.
I know,
that 5 points.
I know, but what point? We're going to spend millions of dollars renovating a building that no one wants to use?
Well, I'm not even talking about the building. I'm talking about the street going down in front of it with a picture of the building that they bought, and it's part of the new renovation plan. And I don't see any changes to the Cherokee Hotel in this renovation plan.
Nobody wants it right now. Nobody wanted it then, or a private business would have bought it. But hey, when you're buying it with other people's money that you just increased your grip on their wallets, I guess you could do whatever you wanted to do. Especially since you didn't tell us you were going to buy it before you raised our taxes. You used the firemen and the policemen as a reason to raise our taxes, and then turned around and first thing you did was buy a dilapidated building that no one else wanted.
Well, I think that's why they raised them, was to buy it. But.
Well, of course, it was a bait and switch.
Well, anyway, we'll probably be dead and gone when that project's over with, John, and we won't be worrying about it.
It'll probably be torn down. That'll be the best thing. Hey, we spent a bunch of your money to buy a building no one wanted with no use for it, and eventually it got so dilapidated we had to spend a bunch more of your money to tear it down to get rid of the liability.
Well, they said Cleveland's needing a parking garage, so we could tear it down and put a parking garage there, right?
Actually, I heard that there is some plan afoot for the city to build one. I don't know exactly where.
I've heard that too.
Well, that would at least make some sense.
If Joe Fivas or Kevin Brooks or someone on the council wants to call in, 614-5553. If you are not on the city council, you're not called.
Now, I will tell you, Kevin Brooks is going to say, I didn't have anything to do with this.
No,
This happened before I got there.
Kevin, I'm sitting here looking at, Kevin's article in here about the growth of Cleveland and some of the things. Whirlpool has started tearing one of their buildings down for some of this renovation. And
Well, why didn't we just buy that too? I mean, why would we make that company have to do that?
John,
We should have just bought all of
John,
that and spent
John,
taxpayer dollars.
John, I got a feeling we're going to end up buying it later.
Well, at least we're waiting until they tear it down, and clean it up.
Well, that's what they're waiting on, make sure there's nothing there, I'd say. Anyway, the liquor situation, it tickles me. Estes has people complaining in his area about it's going to hurt their area to have liquor stores. So they're wanting to change the rules now for certain areas, and they don't know what to do.
Wouldn't that have been
They need an attorney. Franklin, could you help them? They're going to hire an outside attorney. You think you could help them on this liquor store situation?
Not likely.
What would have been the odd idea of having that conversation before we had the referendum?
Well, respectfully, I don't know that that's possible. They passed a series of rules and restrictions that a lot of people thought were pretty significant, so that it was not likely that a lot of people could make those restrictions.
Well, they changed them. They were going to have 5 stores.
Well, I'm not talking about the number. I'm talking about the building sizes and the parking requirements and so forth, and the amount of road frontage. And there's not a lot of places that meet those.
I don't know why you couldn't have why they have to be a standalone building. That's not made any sense to me.
Well,
There's a lot of property that.
I know the answer. The answer was for security reasons. That would be
The answer might have also been to increase the cost of going into it,
Sure.
thereby screening certain people out and certain people in.
Sure, that's probably true. So I don't know how they can go back and undo it. I know that there's some folks in that community who have a sort of a petition drive.
Where are we talking about?
The South Side community over here, the Blythe Oldfield area is what we're talking about.
That
They
the
have
presence of 2 particular stores on Wildwood Avenue and Georgetown Road areas would be disruptive to the local community.
You mean, no, wait a minute, let me make sure I understand this right. You mean liquor stores in the community might have a detrimental effect?
That's what they're saying.
Well, wouldn't that have been nice for someone on the city council to have put forward before we voted on
Well,
this?
it's only in these areas, though.
Right, well, we don't really care about those areas, do we? I mean, everybody knows that. I got that from the school board. We were talking about when they were placing Mayfield, we wanted them to build it on the site where the old armory was and take in the YMCA building and close Oak Street. You could share the football field. There were several reasons that made sense. And I had a school board member said, well, we just don't think that combined schools are good for the children. I went, really? Well, tell that to the Blythe Bower people that you combined into the largest school in the district and then stuck down there in a hole built by an inferior design firm that leaked, floor tiles popped, windows rusted. Why was it okay for that side of the city but not this side of the city? And I'm supposed to be the Republican that doesn't care about kids.
Here's something you're going to like, John. Brooks also discussed upcoming road projects and said that street paving projects will increase changing the repaving schedule from once every 27 years to every 20 years.
That was one of the. That was actually part of what they talked about when they raised our taxes, which is amazing if you think about it. We need to raise taxes so we can do one of the few essential services we're actually supposed to do.
They're talking about this Bradley County Veterans Home. How big is that thing supposed to be? Does anybody know?
I think it houses something like, it's less than 100, I believe. I could be completely wrong about that.
Well, they're talking about it taking over 2 years to build.
It's a pod design. You've got
Add on.
Yeah, it's a pod design, I think, with eating areas, and you've also got to have some nursing areas for care and things like that.
Also, it looks like they're talking about doing a developing program, called a pilot program, where for downtown development in lieu of taxes. I guess you're going to get your taxes waived for a period of time. They haven't discussed the amount of time yet.
I suppose it has something to do with whether you're spending a certain amount of money in renovation of a property or
Well,
something.
it's a TIF, tax incremental financing, that it's a positive way to attract businesses. Basically, if we'd like this to happen. If you'll agree to try to make it happen, we'll try and give you. Well, here's a great example. It's exactly the reason Ocasio-Cortez ran Amazon out of New York, because they said, look, if you'll come in here and do this, we'll give you some tax advantages for a few years, and overall, we're going to make more money off it. Well, she wasn't smart enough to understand that the $300 million in tax write-offs wasn't actual money that they were handing. It was money they were allowing Amazon to keep because they were going to get a bunch more money. She's not smart enough to figure that out with her econ degree.
Oh, Lord. John, here's something I'm going to bring up. I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
All right.
The domestic argument led to Cleveland man shooting death. Okay?
Yep.
You guys got in a fight in the house. and one of them just happened to have a gun over in the closet,
Right.
and just by chance he just pulled it out and shot the other guy. They were friends, and killed him.
Right.
So
So what you're saying is I should never go over to John's house.
not in getting a fight. Okay. But I'm
Because
sure.
without the ownership of the gun, you should go over to people's houses and get in fights.
Hey, another thing, by the way, I know you've got to go to court this morning. You got to leave a little early, but I want to give you some good advice right now before you go.
Okay.
They say Polk County, half of the people in Polk County pack. Over half.
Not in the courtroom.
Well, they say it's the safest place. It's the safest part of Tennessee right now. Polk County is.
Okay.
Well, actually, the county down below Atlanta that required all homes to own guns actually saw a huge drop in the burglary rate the first year they passed that.
They required all
They
of them.
passed an ordinance.
How in the world did anybody ever get that done?
It's
Kennesaw is what he's talking about.
Kennesaw, Georgia, and they required every home to own a gun, and the burglary rate dropped like 37% or something the first
Why
year.
don't we get those? Why don't you bring that up here and let's vote on it and get Cleveland to do it?
We'll ask Councilman Estes to sponsor it.
Yeah. But I want to get back to this liquor situation again. They've changed this thing about 2 or 3 times.
What was your point on the, What was your point on the guns?
Well,
You just walked away from that.
well, on the gun, I was just saying there was a domestic argument here in Cleveland,
Yeah.
and the fight was going on, and all of a sudden the guy was fighting in a bedroom
Yeah.
and had his gun and pulled it out and shot the guy.
And if he had picked up his,
If he hadn't had a gun, he
if he
would've
had
shot
picked
him.
up his marble paperweight and hit him in the head and killed him, that would mean something about marble paperweights.
I guess it would.
Okay.
I was trying to get some kind of remark out of Franklin, but he's been awful quiet this morning.
He's probably in mourning over the Mueller report. So
Actually, he probably is. I didn't want to bring that up yet. Actually, I want to talk, before we get into that, he's got to leave early, I'm sure.
Okay.
I want to talk about this Jesse Smollett. What's going on there, Franklin? What do you think happened?
Something corrupt happened.
It's clearly white privilege. Oh, wait a minute. He's not white. It can't be white
Or
privilege.
celebrity privilege.
It is celebrity privilege. Here's the best thing about that. It's, once again, Franklin's people. Hollywood and the college cheating scandal. Franklin's people. So the people that holler the most about fairness and all of that are the ones that engage in this on a personal level the worst.
Except how those people were donating to Republicans. So,
Actually, they're not.
Yeah, actually, a lot of them were.
H. Macy is one of the worst critics of the Trust.
he didn't get arrested.
No, his wife got arrested.
Okay,
So he wasn't even man enough to go to jail in her place.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. That case was pretty high profile, and all of a sudden they put a stop to
Look,
it.
there's a lot of things going on. There's still investigations going on. Michelle Obama is being brought into this. Her former chief of staff, and Michelle's got pictures of her and Smollett all over the place.
I saw a picture of Smollett.
Her former chief of staff came in and contacted them and started brokering this deal. Now, Michelle Obama's chief of staff, who is a lawyer, who is also the lawyer that has been brought in to take care of the Southern Poverty Law Center's escalating accusations of sexual and racial harassment, you know, the group that all of the media uses to tell us who are sexual and racial harassers. They've now had their founder resign, and now the president has had to resign over allegations of sexual and racial harassment at the Southern Poverty Law Center. Well, this is the same woman that has gone up here and meddled in this, and she was Michelle Obama's chief of staff.
Isn't the story there that what she urged them to do was to turn it over to the FBI instead of just local?
We don't know what she
Isn't
urged.
that what was reported?
We don't know.
Isn't that what the Republican conservative media was reporting?
No. What we've reported is that she became involved. And what people want to know
Apparently what
Why?
she did was allege that she wasn't confident that the local authorities would do the right
what
thing.
business does she have in it,
Maybe
Franklin?
she's a citizen there. Didn't that give us all the right to comment on it?
Well, here's the thing, Franklin. The prosecutor recused herself
Supposedly.
And then, when this deal was brokered, it's now come out that she reinserted herself to
what I'm
broker the
saying.
deal. Well, let me ask you a question.
Sounds like Michelle Obama's chief of staff was correct.
They're all Democrats, Franklin. They're all liberal Democrats. And I will have to give some credit. Rahm Emanuel, although apparently his wife has different opinions on this, but Rahm Emanuel was pretty emotional yesterday and made a pretty good pitch.
What about the police chief?
Well, the police chief, of course, is upset about this.
I mean, this thing is pretty amazing.
It wasn't
really.
even done well.
Who are y'all arguing with here? I just started by saying something stunk here.
Yeah, it does stink. So I want to talk about some more stink. How about the $10,000? I mean, is that not?
The whole thing's stupid.
I mean,
What did you hear what the prosecutor?
He had to put up $10,000 in bond, and part of the deal was
To forfeit.
So $10,000.
He forfeited that. Now, wait a minute. Here's something else. Jesse Jackson was involved. You know that?
Well, of course, it's Chicago.
Jesse was heavily involved in this, and he's on the board or something for Michael Jackson's deal, and this Jesse Jackson arranged for Soulette to serve his time.
What time? We don't even know what he did.
no.
You mean community service?
But we don't even know what community service he's done.
Well, he went to Michael Jackson's house.
Well, and by the way, they've sealed the record.
You mean Michael Jordan? Since we're talking about Chicago.
No, I think it was Jesse Jackson talking about what was the singer
Michael Jackson's house in California?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it was. I'm not sure. Evidently there's so much crap going on right now. It's hard to get.
Well, I can tell you, much to John's chagrin, more liberal-leaning news organizations and so forth were expressing just as much outrage over this as everybody else was. Nobody thinks this was a good thing. It smells bad. It looks corrupt. I don't know why anybody would.
Well, what do you think's going to happen from it?
I don't know if anything can happen unless you can find that if they can show that the lead prosecuting attorney up there recused herself and then inserted herself back into it, then there's a possibility that she'll face some consequences, and I imagine she'll face consequences when she comes up for re-election.
Well, how do you think they meet his attorney for a minute, would you? How do you think they worded this thing to get out of it? You think that?
And Franklin, the Michelle Obama's aide that got involved, you're right. She asked him to turn it over to the FBI when he was a victim. She went in on his behalf when he was a victim, not on the public's behalf when we found out it was a hoax.
Well, either way, the FBI. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
So it should have been turned over to the FBI.
No, she was going in because
Why did they not have a
because
jury
they were
case?
blowing up the idea that it was a hate crime attack by MAGA people. That's when she got involved.
Why did they not have a jury trial for this?
They had
They
a
had
trial.
to it.
I mean, but why wouldn't it have been a jury trial?
It
Well, it would
would
have
have
been.
Okay.
It would have been.
And the prosecutor made the
The
decision.
prosecutor's the one who decided to
So
dismiss the charges.
the state attorney, let me see, he is first assistant state attorney, Joseph Maggots. He's the one that dropped him. He's the one that made the final decision.
His
Supposedly,
name was Maggots.
it's Magats, Maggots. Anyway,
That does-
a CBS reporter asked him after all the crap started exploding about it, do you believe that he was innocent? And he said, I do not believe that he is innocent. And he made the final charge, and then he said, we did not exonerate him. So this is the guy that made the decision to drop all these charges, saying, hey, he's guilty. And the only reason he had to say we did not exonerate him is because Smollett's lawyers immediately started saying he's been exonerated.
Yeah.
I mean, this is pretty amazing. I mean,
It stinks.
it stinks.
There's no doubt.
So what's going to be the follow-up to the stink?
Likely nothing.
Well, then,
Unless you can show a bribe or something like that, the decision to drop charges generally is in the discretion of the government in those cases.
well, the mayor's raising
The judge could, I don't know in Chicago, here the judge could weigh in on that a little bit, but by and large, the prosecution is going to make that determination, and they have the right to do that even if it's a stupid decision like it clearly was here, I think.
They went to the state and not the local.
Well, this is the local prosecutor, Cook County prosecutor.
And
It'd be like our Stephen Crump is our DA here. Is
that elected position?
It is up there also. Mm-hmm.
the local FOP has called for an investigation into how this transpired.
And I think that's appropriate.
I think there ought to be.
General order, please.
I think there ought to be a democratic election about what should happen here.
Look, everybody up there is Democrats. Everybody involved in this is Democrats.
Oh well. Anyway, this Jesse Smollett. I sat there and look at it. If you want to really look at something that's crooked,
Well, if you want to
really
do something
gives you a
about
bad
this,
vibe. That gives you a bad vibe. When
if you want to
see
do
this.
something about this, here's something you can do. And I really hate to say this because there are, I'm sure, hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have nothing to do with this that'll be damaged by it. But you quit watching Empire. Because if you look at what Empire did yesterday, they made a victory dance in the end zone. You know, he's been exonerated. We were right. We were welcoming him back. Now, there's a bunch of actors and a bunch of technicians on that show that don't have anything to do with that. But the leadership on that show is insulting the American people with what they said yesterday.
It's going to be difficult for me. I've never seen the show.
I've never seen it either.
I haven't either. If I seen it, it was by accident.
Well, actually, I knew about it. I've never watched it. How's that?
Well, anyway, I sat there and you look at that and you try to figure out how crooked can this world get, you know?
It's Chicago. The Democrats. What do you expect?
Well, I guess we can talk about the Mueller report now.
3 minutes till break.
I don't know. Franklin's got to leave early today, so we may not take a break. We may just go through.
Well, let's just do it a little differently. Let's each say our piece before we start debating with each other. I don't care. Let John go. It's fine.
Go ahead, John. What do you want to say about it?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. Mueller is rather disappointing. The report's kind of disappointing on a couple of cases. At the end, he couldn't help but make a political statement because prosecutors don't state whether they exonerated someone or not. They simply state whether there were enough facts.
Guilty or not guilty. Right?
They don't say guilty or not guilty either. They say there were enough facts to justify charges or there weren't enough facts to justify charges. For example, there weren't enough facts to justify any charges in collusion, but he never stated, I've exonerated Donald Trump from that. But at the end, he had to make a little statement there on the obstruction charges. Well, if he couldn't show any reason to charge him with obstruction, and if he deferred that back to the Justice Department, then why did we have him in the first place? Because the only reason you appoint a special counsel is when the Justice Department is too conflicted to handle the investigation. So the very fact that he delivered that back with no decision and said, I'm leaving it to Attorney General Barr, shows that we shouldn't have had a special prosecutor in the first place. Because the whole reason you had it was because supposedly the AG wasn't able to be independent enough. So it's an insult to the very idea that we wasted 2 years on this in the first place.
$25 million.
You follow what I'm saying? On top of the fact that Barr last summer, when he was an assistant or a former AG, laid out what he saw as the legal reasons that you couldn't bring obstruction charges. Well, Mueller knew how Barr viewed that, so he had two choices. He either said, I disagree and I think he committed obstruction of justice, or he has to accept Barr's theory. Well, by turning it back to Barr, he accepted Barr's theory without having to actually say, I accept Barr's theory. But what Barr said was, if there's no underlying crime, you can't say a president obstructed justice by doing his constitutionally authorized actions, because he was constitutionally allowed to fire the director of the FBI. And the argument was always, well, it was his intent. Well, if there's no underlying crime, you can't show intent. And that was the case Barr laid out. And basically Mueller said, I agree with that, without having enough backbone to actually say, I agreed with that.
All right, Franklin, go ahead.
Is he done?
I don't know. That was just one part of it, Franklin.
Well, go ahead. You can say anything you want.
Well, I mean, frankly, there's just all kinds of stuff here. And I don't know what, the Democrats, I can read you all kinds of quotes where they were excited about Barr's appointment. They thought he was a man of integrity and this was going to be the end of the question. And as soon as he didn't deliver what they wanted, they're all going, oh, this is a travesty. We need more investigations. Go ahead, Franklin.
Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk about Mueller, not Barr. The first thing I would say is that I think that the Republican Party in particular owes Bob Mueller an apology. His life has been completely above board and admirable. He served his country honorably and with distinction. And in spite of all this carping and yelling, he came out and found that the president had not conspired with the... No, let me finish now. That's what we agreed on. Okay?
All right.
He had not done that. And so for all this yelling and screaming you guys did, he got
you
to
were
the...
doing most of the yelling,
No,
Franklin.
no.
No, I'm not.
And let me tell you, no, because you guys were saying that he was un-American, that he was part of some deep state conspiracy against the president, and yet he still got to the right place.
You're saying it was the right place?
I
You're
hope
saying
it's the right place.
are you
Let me
accepting?
finish.
But are you saying that it's the right place?
I said we were going to let each other talk.
Mhm.
Okay? So, if that's his conclusion, then I think that's a good thing for the country.
It is a good thing.
Are you still talking?
Yeah, I am.
I was letting you finish.
He's agreeing with
I'm
you.
agreeing with you,
Okay?
Franklin.
All right. Now, I do think this. I do think that in the interests of the country, that report should be released to the extent possible. Let me finish.
Mhm.
You can't help yourself, I know. All right? Parts of it are classified, but the president has the ability to declassify that. And in the interests of the nation's belief in the report, it ought to be released. It ought to be out there. Now, secondarily, I disagree with what John said on the obstruction question. Okay, you can obstruct an investigation, and if you do that, that can be a crime.
I'm saying it's
But Franklin-
Now, let me finish.
No, wait a minute.
Just be quiet. And let me finish.
Well, you're
Then
wrong
you can
about what I
talk.
said, but okay.
Well, these are the words you said a moment ago.
I said by his legally, constitutionally authorized actions.
Okay. All right.
I'm not talking about
Well-
doing other things. If he was legally allowed to do something, you would have to show intent. If there's no underlying crime, you can't show intent.
Well, if you,
Which hunt? Go ahead.
so I don't know what's in that report about what he found about that, and none of us do. And I think we ought to wait for that to come out before anybody comments on that. I don't think that there's even the best example, somebody used it yesterday, is if you can just imagine for a moment back during the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing, if Clinton's appointed attorney general said, hey, I looked at the Starr report, there's nothing there, and didn't release any of the information, y'all wouldn't have been satisfied with that. It's the same thing here. The report ought to be released so that people can judge for themselves what's in it.
No one's arguing not to. The Republicans have all called for it to be released as well.
Well,
but my question to you was, does that also include the FISA applications and
Everything.
the underlying
Everything.
FBI things?
Yeah.
So you want all of that
I do.
released?
Everything.
Then you and I are completely on the same page.
Okay, good.
I
We
absolutely
agree.
do. I absolutely do.
Now then,
So people can judge that for themselves.
can I talk now?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the investigation about to start with?
Well, first of all, it started with the other part of the Mueller report, which is 100% on the basis of the conclusion that the Russians were trying to meddle in the election. No question about it.
How did this investigation start on our president?
That's
What
how it started.
By Russian collusion.
No, it didn't start on
No, Russian collusion. Every intelligence agency we have, the FBI, the Defense Department, the CIA, the NSA, all have the same conclusion, that the Russians were actively trying to interfere in the election.
What did
So
the
we
Democrats-
investigated.
What did Obama do about it when he found out about it? When he was president?
Well, the investigation started during that period of time.
He did nothing. Here's the problem, though, Franklin.
You know, you can be critical of President Obama for not
conflating two investigations, and that's what you all have done the whole way through. There was concern about the Russians' involvement in trying to meddle in our election. That has nothing to do with the decision to start surveilling a third-tier campaign guy named Carter Page over an overheard conversation. That's the problem, and here's a problem for you all. There's new text messages that have been put out between McCabe, and it now appears that the White House lied about not knowing about this. On October 14, 2016, Page wrote to McCabe talking about a meeting with the White House. Just called, apparently, the DAG, Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, you'll remember her, the woman that disobeyed Trump's rules, now wants to be there, and the White House wants DOJ to host, so we are setting that up now. It goes on to talk about Cohen, who's the deputy CIA director. This was all about this investigation and the surveillance of the Trump campaign. White House had said they didn't know about it. These directly conflict what the White House told us. They did know about it.
What do you think, Franklin?
Well, first of all, I would expect, if that's accurate, that that's going to be in the Mueller report, and that ought to be part of what's released.
No, actually, that's the problem. It's probably not in the Mueller. It may be in the Mueller investigation. and the problem will be, I was surprised for you to agree it should be released, because what the Democrats have said is they want the report released, they want this investigation released, but they don't want the FBI's FISA stuff released.
Well, let me ask this question. Should there be an investigation into Hillary?
I've said all along, I don't care if you investigate Hillary. I'm not scared of the investigations.
Hillary probably is.
I'm not scared of it.
Well, so you'd be okay if we had a special investigator go back to the beginning, investigate?
Y'all have the Department of Justice. You can investigate anybody you want.
Well, Frank, let me ask, this is an actual statement from the end of the Mueller report, and he said, this is a quote, "While this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him." Is that a prosecutor's statement or a political statement? Tell me
Whoa. This is Barr's statement. We don't know what Mueller's statement is.
That's Mueller's words.
We don't know that.
Unless you're calling Barr released this as a direct quote. It's one of the direct quotes from the report.
I don't know.
Is that a prosecutor's statement or a political statement? When does a prosecutor say, we did not exonerate him? They don't ever say that.
Oh, I've heard them say that many times. Sure.
No, Franklin. They're supposed to say,
because the question there is, do we have enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt?
That's a statement.
But let me be honest with you here. Here's things that we know that are not in dispute. You know, the reason this investigation took so long, in large part, is because so many people surrounding the president, including the president, publicly said things that are just plain lies. And we know it.
So you mean all these people that went to jail for process crimes for a original crime that never happened. So their lives are destroyed. Their finances are destroyed.
Michael Flynn lied about contacts with Russia.
What about Papadopoulos?
That's a fact.
What about
He pled guilty to it.
What about Papadopoulos? He went to jail for 12 days. What did he do?
He lied also, according to the charging document.
Let me ask you a question. This is the problem.
And he admitted it.
Look, I agree. Michael Flynn, in the heat of the battle, lied.
And then what happened after that? The vice president goes on national television. Right. I'm not making this up, right, and says nobody in the Trump campaign met with the Russians. That's what he said. That turns out to have been false.
You all created, with the help of the media, the very situation that got Michael Flynn to lie.
Do you think
Hang on, let me finish. Is an incoming national security advisor, is it not normal for them to go ahead and start meeting with leaders of foreign countries? Well, you're right. Because the media made it into an incident. The fact that he met with them shouldn't have been a problem, and he should have had the backbone to have just got up and go, by God, Obama's people did exactly the same thing. There's nothing wrong with it. But between the Democrats and the media, they put him in a vice, and he lied.
And what did Donald Trump do? He went on this bizarre series of statements about Putin and Russia at the same time, All this is going on at the same time, and you think nobody's going to go, well, that's weird.
No, you know what? It happened with Obama, and no one said that's weird because they supported him. That's the point.
Papadopoulos has got a new book out. I want you to read it.
Okay.
He's got a brand new book. Anyway, his
So
story is he had people following him everywhere he went. It was really a setup. They were trying to get him to flip and say something bad about the president.
Mm-hmm.
And he said all this Russian stuff was all a hoax.
Well, according to the Australian ambassador, Papadopoulos was the one bragging about it.
That's the point. That's the sole piece of evidence that this entire surveillance of the Trump campaign started over was an overheard conversation from a third-tier campaign guy. Nothing. And here's the point, Franklin. This is a searing indictment, the Mueller report, actually, of the FBI. Because what is a counterintelligence operation for? It's to protect someone. So what should have happened is they should have notified the Trump campaign, we feel that the Russians are trying to infiltrate your campaign. But they didn't. What they did was they started surveilling the Trump campaign because they weren't interested in protecting anyone. They were interested in trying to trap someone.
Well, with all due respect, I think their first obligation was to make sure that the president or his campaign was not
They notified
compromised.
the Clinton campaign that the Russians were trying to hack into their servers. They protected her. They didn't notify Trump.
Well, they weren't trying to hack into the...
They were trying to infiltrate his campaign, supposedly, according to the overheard conversation. That's the point, Franklin. They protected Hillary.
Actually,
they tried
the
to
overheard conversation
Trump.
was a statement that they already had.
He's a
damaging
third. That's the
information
point, Franklin. You go to the Trump campaign. You say this third-tier campaign guy is trying to cooperate with the Russians, and the campaign says, great, glad you told us, we're cutting him loose.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what they did. They allowed it to go on because they were trying to entrap them. And that's what the problem. The Mueller thing is an indictment of the FBI.
Well, maybe it will be. You have to release the report.
Well, now we know that the Obama White House was actually notified about it and knew based on these new emails that are out. And they then lied and said we didn't know anything about it. But they did know about it.
That's not true,
I just
John.
read that to you, Franklin. They set
That's
up a meeting
not true,
about it.
John. There have been all kinds of reporting about all the communications in the meetings going on in the White House about whether they were debating whether to make it public or not.
Franklin, that's after the fact.
That was before the election.
The White House said they weren't involved in any of the FISA courts. They weren't notified, and they knew nothing about it. Andrew McCabe's release text show that's not the case. They were involved from the very beginning.
You know, it's like the president last week comes out and says something that's just blatantly, demonstrably false.
What?
Well, he said that McCain took the Steele dossier to the FBI in order to, before the election, to influence it. That's not true.
Well, he did take it. And
after the election, though.
McCain said
not before.
McCain said he didn't do it.
No, that is not true.
But McCain's people said they didn't do it. And it turns out they did do it.
After the
It
election.
doesn't matter, Franklin.
It does. If the president can't get his facts straight, and you wonder why anybody has doubts
I say he knows more about.
I
I say he knows more about it. I say he knows more about it
Your
than
insurance,
you
you can keep your insurance.
You mean
that
like
kind of
when
things.
he comes out and let me tell you something, John. If I were being investigated for the theory that I might be committing treason, I'd get my facts straight.
But that's the point, Franklin. There was never any evidence of that at all.
That's right.
And the
Really?
Obama administration
think that's true at all.
weaponized the mechanism of
What's the
government
evidence?
to use it against their political opponent.
I think when your national
constitutional
security
assault.
advisor, your campaign chairman, your deputy campaign chairman are all lying about contacts with the Russians, that's plenty of reason
Franklin,
to
the
investigate.
point was they shouldn't have ever been asked in the first place.
Of course
It
they
is
shouldn't have.
it is completely
Then why
normal.
lie about it?
Because you made an incident out of it, and they got nervous and they screwed up. No,
Boy,
look,
everybody screwed
Franklin,
up then.
when Obama came into office, his people did exactly the same thing. The difference is the national media didn't make a circus out of it and get them backed into a corner and see whether they could make a mistake. And you're right, Michael Flynn screwed up, made a mistake. But the underlying
make a mistake.
he made a mistake
The
to lie.
national
He made a
security
mistake.
advisor
Franklin.
to the president of the United States lied.
He did. But the point is, he shouldn't have ever been asked in the first place because his meeting with the Russian advisor was completely normal.
And then
It's
he
your
should have
people.
just said
It's
that.
your people and the media complex that created the circus that got him nervous, and that's what got him to screw up.
He screwed up by saying he was
By
guilty.
lying about something that he was able to do and was supposed to do. Same thing Obama's people did. By the way, if you want to discuss the CIA and all the directors, let's talk about John Brennan's just this last month saying that the Trump family was going to go to jail. Now, this is all the weight and authority of his former position. This is a text from him, just end of January this year. Your cabal of unprincipled, unethical, dishonest, and sycophantic cronies is being methodically brought to justice. We all know where this trail ends. If your utter incompetence is not enough to run you out of office, your increasingly obvious political corruption surely will. That's John Brennan. You okay with that?
John! Sorry,
Franklin's left.
He's calling in. He don't want to miss it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I got you. You're good.
Franklin had to leave, but he's going to call us back in. He's got to go to a court somewhere. Go ahead, Franklin. Here they are.
What am I supposed to comment on?
Wait a minute. We're trying to get John set up with his headphones.
Oh.
Franklin pulled my headphones away so I wouldn't be able to hear what he said.
It's pretty technical stuff, so I don't know if John's up to that, what with his, 18th century mentality.
I mean, the 18th century mentality that built the United States into the greatest country in the world.
Let me add into this conversation just a moment. What's been found out right now was that the FBI, the Department of Justice, all the internal workings were crippled, and they were using information to spy on this new president campaign. Now then, that's what needs to be investigated, Franklin. That needs to be investigated. They were illegally doing things from the Obama side.
Unlike you guys, I'm not scared of that investigation.
Well,
But
good.
most of your Democratic allies in Congress are, because they don't want that part released. They only want the Mueller report released.
I don't know if you realize this or not, but you're in charge of the Department of Justice and the Senate. You can investigate anything you want.
Franklin, one of the problems that we've got in the country right now is the press. The press is so powerful. And you're right, we can do that, and I hope we do, and I think we probably will. But the Democrat Party always has the wind in their sails of the national press, and it makes these kind of things very difficult for the opposing side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Franklin.
The press is supposed to investigate. That's what they're.
But that's the problem. They don't investigate evenly. There was a University of Michigan grad student 20 years ago did a study on NRA ad expenditures. He found that for every dollar the NRA spent on pro-gun ads and attachments, the anti-gun people got $100 in free coverage out of the media. That's our problem. The media is not unbiased anymore, and they're not even embarrassed by being unbiased. They don't even try anymore.
I think that's the greatest right-wing myth of all, that the world's being dominated by the media, and it's all part of this conspiracy.
Franklin, they've done studies on it, and like 90% of the media are registered Democrats who voted for Hillary Clinton. 90 to 10. You're going to claim that shows their...
Why don't any conservatives become journalists?
Because the journalism people punish them, and the guys and women know that if they come out as conservative, they better have a job at Fox because all the other networks will run them off.
Wait a minute, they're trying to run Fox off now.
Well, of course they are, because they don't believe in the First Amendment.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I want to ask another opinion here.
Okay.
Matador just walked in. Matador, what do you think's going on with our country right now and our president? Is our president doing a good job or a bad job?
Well, I'm going to put it like this the best way I possibly can. He's standing up for his word. He's going to make America.
Go ahead and say it.
Well,
great again.
Yeah, make it a miracle again.
Are you behind him?
Well, whether you believe it or not, yes, we have to, whether you're with him or not.
Would you tell Mr. Franklin Chancey that? He's on the line there. Go ahead.
Well, there's nothing I can say. It says it itself if you just look at it. I mean, it's happening right before our eyes. You know?
In other words, you think he's doing a good job?
Well, yes, I mean, the best
Would
he
you
possibly
vote?
can
Would you
do.
vote for him again if he's running today?
Well, he's doing everything he said he was going to do.
Exactly right.
Well, look, they actually had a new poll out. Hill Harris survey released Monday. 54% of the people said they would consider voting for Trump's reelection. 46% said they wouldn't. That's a huge jump in his poll.
You heard what Hickson's prediction was here several weeks ago, right?
What's that?
I predicted the middle of the road Democrats are going to reelect President Trump. They're not going to go as far left as the left side of the Democrat Party right now. The liberal side.
So you think he's going to get back in?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I was hoping the election be today.
All right, then.
What about you, Franklin? You think Trump's going to win again? You there? He's gone quiet on us. I guess he's gone.
You still there, Franklin? No.
He's gone. I guess he got out of our range. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a call. Anybody want to give us a call? There we go. Now then, is that Franklin again?
You cut me off there. It's part of the right-wing conspiracy.
Is that it?
Well, anyway.
We knew you were going to make some argument that was going to embarrass you defending the Democrats, so we were trying to protect you.
Now, Randy Jarrett said he was going to vote for Trump again, so he thinks Trump's doing a pretty good job. He said, what was it you said, Randy? He's doing what he said he was going to do.
He's doing exactly what he said.
Going to make America great again.
Yeah.
I was kind of curious about that statement, actually.
You're kind of pleased about it?
Curious.
No, curious about it. I mean, what I saw the last couple of weeks was we had the largest trade deficit in U.S. history. I thought he said we would have a surplus.
Well, he's not finished. We will.
Well, I mean, he's had 2 years, and then he said, let's see, what was it he said?
Well, I mean, he hadn't had 2 years. Hey, he's been in court with you for 2 years.
See, that's one of the problems with the Mueller thing. you all hamstringed him as much as you could, and he still got a lot done.
Budget surplus, too. And, oh, wait, we had the highest deficit ever. And then, wait, there's more. I'm missing something.
What about her?
Well, Franklin, here's the thing. American people see more money in their paychecks, so by all means, you go down that road and try to convince the American people that we're not doing better because they don't believe you. 54% in a poll just this Monday said they would consider voting to reelect.
Because the president still has a 52% disapproval rate.
I don't think so.
New poll Monday morning, 54% said they would consider voting to reelect.
I bet if there's election today, he'd win by 60%.
60%.
60%.
Okay.
Hey, did you hear the couple complaining on the airplane the other day because they were sitting back next to a Trump supporter?
Now I missed that story.
Anyway, they called the stewardess and all this. They wanted different seats. They weren't going to sit next to this Trump supporter. He hadn't said a word.
Wait a minute. Aren't they the tolerant ones?
Yeah. He hadn't said a word. The only thing he had a T-shirt on that said Donald Trump and all this kind of stuff, and they didn't want to sit next to him.
Frankly, is that you all's new definition of tolerance?
Who's y'all?
The liberal left. Y'all are supposed to be the open, accepting people, and you can't even sit next to someone on a plane?
It was funny. They were showing this on a YouTube, and this guy never said a word to us.
Oh, by the way, Congressman Omar, that Nancy Pelosi said she just wasn't smart enough to understand she was anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Well, they've now found out she's been holding secret fundraising meetings with groups that are connected to radical terrorist operations.
She's a crook too. She's another Democratic left-wing crook.
Okay.
Franklin, she's had 2 fundraisers that we know of that have been closed doors, and one of them was with CARE, which has been connected to, it was an unindicted co-conspirator in a fundraising scheme for Hamas, and the other one was...
Maybe we can put her and Steve King in a small closet and let them figure.
Well, the difference is, Franklin, we stripped Steve King of any of his committee assignments. You people put her anti-Semitic butt on the Foreign Relations Committee.
Yeah, but see, John, y'all had 10 years to work on Steve King, and y'all just woke up this week.
No, Franklin. Steve King has never been particularly prominent, and when he made that final straw that broke the camel's back statement, we immediately stripped him of all his committee assignments. You all couldn't even put together a statement condemning anti-Semitism.
He was the local chair for the president's campaign.
Franklin, he's been stripped of everything. You people couldn't even say that anti-Semitism was wrong. I tell you what, Franklin,
What is anti-Semitism?
anti-Jewish.
Okay.
I tell you what, Franklin, Hillary Clinton's largest voting bloc, percentage-wise, was the Jewish community, the Jewish vote in America. So by all means, you continue defending people like Ilhan Omar, and you watch what Donald Trump gets in the Jewish community this next election.
Okay, sure.
Well, Matador, why don't you give us some insight on what's going on in our country right now?
Well, they're tearing it up and putting it back together again, but they're putting it back together again the way that they want it put back together.
Well, you say the way they want it put back together?
Yeah.
What do you mean by
Which is
that?
going to be better for the people.
Better for the people. Hey, this is the Matador. He makes pretty good sense.
Coming or Terry.
Huh? Franklin doesn't know who the Matador is, Randy.
And he's a little smurf running around here.
He said he's that little smurf that runs around here at the village.
Yeah.
No. Matador said they are putting it back together the way they want to. Who is they?
Yeah, he wants to know who they is.
The people.
The people.
The people.
Hey, Franklin, just a little aside since we're right at the end. The Jacobshan, I may be saying that, Jacobshan Glacier, that ice glacier that's about a mile thick that they've talked about melting. Apparently, the last 2 years, it's actually been growing at the same rate it was melting previously. And NASA says that a natural cooling cycle of the North Atlantic waters is causing it to reverse course and now grow. So I'm wondering, if it grows and that's a natural cooling cycle, why wouldn't it melting be a natural warming cycle instead of man-made global warming?
Because the world's coming to an end.
By the way, the world, according to the UN, in the 80s was going to end in 2000 because of global warming.
A panic.
Picture of the duck that's reaching out of a snake's mouth trying to strangle the snake.
Franklin, ocean temperatures in that bay have now gone up to levels not seen since the mid-1980s, or gone down. So cold. So the water's getting colder and the glacier is growing. My point is not that it didn't melt previously. My point is it's growing because of natural cyclical movements in the water. It melted because of natural cyclical movements in the water.
We have nothing to do with it. Nothing.
We have nothing to do with that. Absolutely. That has to do with the ocean currents. And that's the point. You people, you all aren't Christians and you're not Jews and you're not Muslims anymore. You're worshiping climate. You're worshiping the idea of the Green New Deal, which, by the way, is going to get its chance to be voted on. Just did. Not a single Democrat voted for it. But guess what? Y'all weren't brave enough to vote against it. You voted present.
Actually, John, what we did was ask for the opportunity to have public hearings where people could actually listen to each other, including the public.
About what, Franklin? We took the bill your people introduced, and we said, great, let's vote on it.
Are your people so scared of debating in public?
We're not, Franklin. We did debate. We had an open debate on the bill, and your people voted present. Well, Franklin, just tell the people y'all are so good to them that you represented them by voting here.
You're overlooking.
You raised your hand and went, I'm here, teacher. I have nothing to say. I didn't do my homework. I didn't take the test, but I voted here. I'm present.
Yeah. The party of no who's scared of facts and debate.
No, we voted no against the bill because we took a stand. Your people said, I'm here.
Don't let any witnesses come and testify. We couldn't have that.
Franklin, the point is, you all didn't even get up on the floor and defend it. You had a chance. They always debate a bill, Franklin. You're right. They didn't hold committee hearings, partly because there's nothing in the Green New Deal. It's a bunch of platitudes.
That's like the Mueller investigation and everything else. We're not scared of investigations.
Well,
Why did you have the Mueller investigation, period?
Come on. Hey, stop running from the...
No, wait a minute, Frank. I want to add to you. Leave our president alone. Let him out. Let him be free. You lost. You lost the election. Let our president be alone. Let him do his job.
You're terrified of facts and truth.
Franklin, I just gave you facts and truth that the glacier's growing, and you belittled it.
So why didn't you have these magic witnesses come testify?
Well, one, Franklin, because the media won't. There was an ad signed by 700 world scientists against. Listen to me. There was an ad signed by 700 world scientists, experts on climate, that said this. It was BS, that it was growing because of all the public consumption. And guess what? The New York Times refused to run the ad. Wouldn't allow that ad to run. So if you want to talk about people being scared, that's your people.
The sunshine and let people decide for themselves.
Then they'll tell the New York Times to let us run our ads.
The hearing, John. Let people testify.
Franklin, it's like this. The press is so far in you all's pocket. Nobody, because Franklin, as soon as someone comes out, even a qualified scientist, and says, I don't really think that the man-made things are influencing this as much, he's immediately labeled a climate denier. And it's your people that says science is settled. Well, guess what? Your people said science is settled, the world is flat, too.
All right, Franklin, we got to go. We've got all things real estate show coming on next, so we've got to make room right here. Tony's in the studio, ready to go.
All right.
Okay, 9 o'clock. All things real estate.
Hey, let's give Daniel Brantley a plug for his new book coming out, though.
All right, a plug for Daniel's new book coming out. Go ahead, Daniel, take it. We need to talk about the new book coming out.
My new book's coming out April 1st. Look up The Only Magic Book You'll Never Need on Amazon and buy
Only
it.
magic book you'll never need.
Never need, yes. It's supposed to be a how to do magic tricks book, but I don't know how to do magic tricks. So
this ought to be a joke.
That's not the best sales pitch for the book. That's like our real estate people going, it's a great house. I really don't know anything about houses. I have no idea about houses, but take my word for it, it's a great house.
I'm just being honest.
Okay.
All right, Franklin, you have a good day in court.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. See you. All right, folks, we wound up another
Well, just as a little quick aside, not to kick NASA, but they've been bragging about having the first dual spacewalk by 2 women in space.
They didn't have enough.
And they didn't have enough suits for women. They didn't send the right size. Apparently the women need medium size.
Yeah.
And they didn't have enough for both women to go out and do the spacewalk.
Is that not amazing? All right, real quick before we leave, what do you think the future is now that the Mueller report's out?
I think
Democrats are upside down.
You know, I think Nancy Pelosi is trying as hard as she can to rein them in, and there's some people like Steny Hoyer and some of the old guard that understand this is a rabbit hole, but they're not going to stop Nadler. They're not going to stop Adam Schiff. They're not going to stop. The liberals are dominant in the party now. And so they're going to go down this rabbit hole. They're going to investigate. They're going to drag this out. They're going to turn the public against them, and they're going to probably reelect the president.
Well, the Hickson prediction, remember what I said. The Democrats will help reelect our president that we currently have at the next election. Donald Trump, keep up the good job. Bye-bye. See you next week.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson